The great hall of Winterfell was still cloaked in smoke from the shattered battle with the Night King. Ice and ash lingered in the air, but the fires of survival burned fiercely in the eyes of the living. Jon Snow stood there, heavy-hearted, surrounded by whispers and wary glances. Daenerys Targaryen was dead by his hand. Her dream of breaking the wheel had ended in flame and blood. And yet, unlike the tale known across Westeros, this time the lords and ladies did not send Jon to the wall. There was no exile, no return to the Night's Watch. Tyrion Lannister had pleaded, but Bran the Broken, now king, chose differently. "Let him stay," Bran had said. "The North needs him more than the wall does." And so Jon Snow stayed. He remained in Winterfell, his childhood home, a place of both love and torment. Sansa welcomed him with a cautious heart. She ruled the North now, sharp and composed. Arya, ever the wanderer, had already sailed west. Bran rarely summoned anyone these days, content in his strange stillness. And Jon, though spared from exile, found no peace. Every corner of Winterfell whispered ghosts into his ear, the laughter of Robb, the fierce eyes of Ned, the innocent voice of Rickon. Even Ghost, his direwolf, sensed his unrest, rarely leaving his side. Jon took to the training, yard most mornings, sweating through battles that no longer needed to be fought. The younger soldiers admired him, but they were afraid to speak. To them, he was the man who had killed the Dragon Queen, the man who had saved the realm only to live like a shadow. Some called him Kingslayer, though not in public. One evening, as snowflakes fell like secrets from the sky, Jon stood by the godswood tree, its red leaves shivering in the wind. Sansa joined him, her cloak rustling like silk against frost. "You don't belong here," she said, not unkindly. Jon didn't look at her. "Where do I belong, then? South, where they see me as a traitor, or beyond the wall with ghosts and wildlings?" "You belong with the living," she replied. "But you act like one of the dead." He turned then, eyes dim but angry. "What do you want me to do, Sansa? Pretend none of it happened? I killed her. I killed Daenerys because I believed it was right. But every night I wonder, was it?" Sansa didn't flinch. "She burned a city of innocence, Jon. You made a choice. One I never could have. That's what makes you different. That's what makes you better." "Better?" he whispered. "If I were better, I wouldn't be haunted." That night, he dreamt of fire again. Daenerys staring at him with betrayal in her eyes, Dragon roaring into the void, and the Iron Throne melting into nothing. He awoke with sweat clinging to his skin like guilt. The North was quiet, but his heart screamed. Weeks passed. Winter eased into a long thaw. Sansa invited him to council meetings, hoping to involve him, to anchor him. Jon attended, listened, even spoke at times. But he always remained apart, a Stark by blood, but a Targaryen by legacy. His true name, Aegon Targaryen, lay buried but never forgotten. Some whispered it still. Some wanted him to reclaim what could have been his. A few, too few, believed he should have taken the Iron Throne after Daenerys, that he could still. Came a raven, black seal, red wax, a message from King's Landing. Bran wanted Jon to travel south. Urgent, it read. A matter of the realm's future. Sansa frowned at the letter. It's a trap, or at the very least, a burden. Why would he want you now? Because he knows I'll go, Jon answered, already gathering his things. You don't owe him anything. No, but I owe the realm. I always have. Before leaving, Jon visited the crypts. He stood before Ned Stark's statue, thinking not of honor, but of lies. He had been raised as a bastard, a Snow, when he was royalty. Ned had done it to protect him, but the wound never healed. He whispered to the statue, You said the man who passes the sentence should swing the sword. "I did, father. I did. And it broke me." Then he rode south, with Ghost trotting beside him and only silence in his heart. The journey south was slower than Jon had expected. Every village he passed through, every tavern he entered, he saw faces watching him with a mixture of awe and suspicion. Some whispered as he passed, nodding with recognition. Others avoided his gaze. In the minds of the people, he was either the traitor who killed the queen or the reluctant hero who saved the realm. Both titles clung to him like frost. To his beard dot by the time he reached King's Landing, the city had changed. Rebuilding was underway, but the scars left by Daenerys' firestorm still marred the stone. Streets that once echoed with life now felt hollow. Children played in alleys where ashes once covered corpses. The Red Keep loomed ahead, partially reconstructed, but its soul felt lost. Bran awaited him in the throne room, not upon the Iron Throne, for that was gone, but seated in a modest chair of oak. Tyrion stood beside him, older, tired, the ghost of a smile twitching at the corners of his mouth when he saw Jon. "You came," Bran said, his voice as calm and distant as ever. Jon bowed his head slightly. "You summoned. I answered." Tyrion stepped forward. "There's unrest in the east. A council of nobles from the free cities are gathering. They're debating whether Westeros is vulnerable, whether we should be brought into their games. And there's word of a claimant." Jon furrowed his brows. "A claimant?" Bran's eyes, pale and haunting, met Jon's. "Someone claiming to be a Targaryen. The son of Daenerys, born in secret, or so they say." Jon's heart thudded once, then went still. Tyrion explained. "He's gathering support. Gold flows to his cause. Some lords, even in Westeros, are entertaining his claim. They believe Daenerys was wronged, that she had a right to rule, that her death must be avenged." Jon clenched his jaw. "And what do you want from me?" Bran's voice never changed. "We need truth. If this claimant is false, we must expose him. If he's real, then your presence will matter more than any sword." Jon shook his head. "You want me to be your bloodhound?" "No," Bran replied. "I want you to decide what's right." Later, Jon wandered the burned corridors of the Red Keep. The ghosts here were not his, yet they pressed close. He stopped at the old throne room, where the Iron Throne once stood. The room was nothing but rubble now. Beams cracked, marble melted. He knelt and ran his hand across the scorched floor. Here, Daenerys had stood. Here, he had taken her life. "I loved her," he whispered, "but I feared her more." Tyrion found him there hours later, holding a piece of blackened steel. "You're thinking about what could have been?" Tyrion asked gently. "No," Jon said. "I'm thinking about what should have never been." Tyrion sighed and sat beside him, looking oddly small against the ruins. "You never wanted any of this, Jon. You still don't. But people like you, the world keeps dragging them back in." Jon stared at him. "This claimant, do you believe?" "Him? I believe people will follow anyone with a crown and a story," Tyrion replied. "That's all it takes." The next day, Jon met the council. Lords from across the realm had gathered. Some stared at him with open disdain, others with thinly veiled hope. The question was simple. Should the realm investigate this new Targaryen, or ignore it and risk war? Jon listened. He didn't speak for a long while. Then he stood. "I'm not here to claim anything," he began. "I've had more names and titles than I ever wanted. I'm a Stark, a Snow, a Targaryen. But above all, I'm a man who's seen what power does. If this person is truly Daenerys' child, then the realm deserves the truth. Not to crown him, but to decide." The room fell quiet. No cheers, no jeers, just silence. That night, as he stood on the balcony of the guest chamber, overlooking the ruined city. Jon felt it, that same emptiness, the same cold weight in his chest. Ghost padded beside him, resting his head on Jon's hand. And for a fleeting moment, Jon wondered if he'd ever find peace, or if his path would always be painted with the ashes of the past. 3 days later, Jon rode east under a dull, iron sky. Bran had given him quiet authority. No banners, no army, just a small escort of trusted riders and mesters. His destination was Lys, a city in the Free Cities known for its secrets and pleasures. Word had spread that the Targaryen claimant, a boy named Meleys, was being raised there under the protection of a noble family with ties to old Valyria. Jon didn't speak much on the journey. He kept to himself, thoughts turning like storms inside his mind. What if the boy was real? What if Daenerys had hidden her child? Could she have borne a son in secret without anyone knowing? She had vanished for a time before returning to Westeros. Time enough to hide a birth. And if the boy was real, did he carry her fire in his blood? Or something darker? They arrived in Lys as night fell. The city was beautiful, but unnerving. Lanterns glowed from every window, perfume clung to the air, and music drifted through the streets like a lie. Jon felt out of place, heavy in dark northern furs, while the rest of the city bathed in silk and scent. Their presence didn't go unnoticed. Lys was a city that thrived on whispers, and a northern party led by Jon Snow was no small arrival. Secured rooms at a quiet inn, and Jon began inquiries. He met a merchant who claimed to have seen the boy. Golden hair, violet eyes, skin like pale fire, the man said with a grin. He's the blood of old Valyria, no doubt. The lady who keeps him calls him her little dragon. Jon's hands tightened around his cup. And where do they live? The merchant shrugged. Outside the city walls, a villa on the cliffs. Guards all around. The kind of guards that don't ask questions before drawing steel. That night, Jon sat alone under the stars. Ghost lay nearby, watchful and still. One of the mesters approached quietly. "You don't have to go in, my lord. We could send someone." "No," Jon interrupted. "If there's a boy there, I want to see him myself." The next day, they rode to the Villa d'Hôte. It was a grand structure, marble and silver, draped with blue banners stitched in gold. The guard stopped them at the gate, hands on hilts, but Jon offered no resistance. "I've come to speak with the boy. I won't harm him." After hours of waiting, the gates opened. They were allowed inside, but only Jon could go beyond. Courtyard d'Hôte, he entered the villa and was brought into a sunlit chamber. There, seated beside a carved dragon statue, was a boy, no older than 10. His eyes were striking, the color of amethyst. His hair was pale, nearly white gold. He looked up at Jon with an expression far too calm for a child. "You're Jon Snow," he said. "I've heard of you." Jon didn't speak for a moment. The resemblance was haunting. Not to Daenerys, but to Rhaegar. The boy had the look of House Targaryen, no doubt. "Who told you about me?" Jon asked, finally. "My mother," the boy replied. "Not the one who birthed me. The one who raised me. She says I'll take the throne one day." Jon stepped closer. "And what do you say?" The boy tilted his head. "I say, the throne burned. There's nothing left to sit on." Jon couldn't help a thin, bitter smile. Smart answer. He sat across from the boy. "What's your name?" "Meleys." "Meleys Waters. That's what they call me. But they say my real name's Aemon." Jon nodded slowly. "And do you believe them?" The boy hesitated. Sometimes I dream of dragons, of fire, of a woman with silver hair crying my name." Jon swallowed hard. This wasn't just a boy being used. There was something real here. Whether by blood or belief, this child was bound to Daenerys' legacy, He stood. "Tell your guardians I'll return. I have more to ask." Before leaving, the boy asked, "Are you my uncle?" Jon paused at the door. "I don't know," he said honestly, "but I'll find out." As Jon rode back to the city, the wind picked up and the sky darkened again. A storm was coming, not just from the sea, but from the past. Whether the boy was a truth or a lie, Westeros would react. The question was not if there would be fire again, but who would start it. Back in the shadowed comfort of the Lys Inn, Jon paced restlessly. The boy's face haunted him. Those eyes, too, old for their years, watched him like Daenerys once did, full of quiet fire and curiosity, edged with danger. He told no one what the child had said. Not yet. Not till he was sure. That night, Tyrion's raven arrived. The message was brief but heavy. Whispers of the boy have reached Dorne and Oldtown. A gathering storm is coming. Return soon. Or don't, and let the wheel break again. Jon crumpled the note and threw it in the fire. He wasn't ready to leave. Yet, 2 days later, he returned to the villa, this time unarmed and alone. The guards didn't stop him. The woman who called herself the boy's mother greeted him at the gates. Her name was Lysara Velaryon, a cousin of the fallen Velaryon. House, though her claim to nobility was murky at best. She was tall, with sharp features and cold, amused eyes. "You've come to take him, haven't you?" she said without pretense. Jon shook his head. "No, I came for answers." Lysara led him through marble corridors, past dragon tapestries and Valyrian, relics too old to be genuine. The boy was born on Dragonstone. Daenerys hid the pregnancy well, with help. I was one of her shadows. She entrusted him to me before she crossed the sea. She never told me, Jon said, voice tight. She didn't trust anyone, Lysara replied. Not truly, not even you. They entered a small chamber filled with scrolls and books. On the table lay a sealed parchment, dark red wax, the Targaryen sigil pressed deep. Jon reached for it. She wrote that before she died, Lysara said softly, in case anything happened. The letter inside was short. Daenerys' handwriting, rushed and scrawled. If I fall, let him live. Let him be no one until he must be someone. Hide him where they least expect. Raise him to be just, not cruel. And when the time is right, tell him who he is. If Jon lives, tell him I trusted him with my soul. Jon sat heavily, the words striking. Something raw inside his chest. He stared at the parchment until his eyes blurred. Why now? He asked finally. Why reveal him now? Because Westeros is broken, Lysara answered. You killed the Dragon Queen, but you didn't kill the dream. The realm needs a spark, and Meleys is more than blood. He's a symbol, a second chance. You, of all people, should understand that. Jon's voice was low. Symbols burn cities. Lysara smiled without humor. Or they rebuild them. That night, Jon spoke with the boy again. This time, they walked the cliffs. The sea crashed violently below, wind roaring like ancient dragons. Do you want to be king? Jon asked him. The boy frowned. What does that mean? It means you'll never be free. You'll never be safe. People will want to kill you. Others will worship you. Most will lie to you. I don't want that, the boy replied. I just want to matter. Jon felt that sentence slice through him. That was the truth at the heart of every war, every throne, every death. The hunger to matter. He knelt beside the boy. You matter already. But the people who would use you don't care about you. They care about your name. And you? The boy asked. Jon didn't answer. Back in his chambers, Jon stared into the flames, same as he had done 100 times before. He had no answers, no direction, just a choice. If he returned to Westeros, and told the truth, war would follow. If he lied, the realm would know peace for a while longer. But peace built on silence always cracked. Then Ghost growled low. Footsteps approached. One of the riders burst in, face pale. "My lord, there was an attempt on the boy. An assassin." We stopped him, but Jon stood immediately. "Is he alive?" "Yes, shaken but untouched. The assassin wore no sigils. But the coin he carried was Dornish." The fire in Jon's chest ignited Dot, so they knew. The realm had already decided. One way or another, this boy was either their threat or their savior. And now, Jon Snow had to choose what he would become once more. Protector, betrayer, or something far worse. Dawn bled slowly over the Lycian coast, its light soft and gold, hiding the blood spilled just hours earlier. The boy lived, but the illusion of safety was gone. Guards now patrolled every hall of the villa, and Maelys Aemon had gone quiet. Jon sat with him in the garden, the boy clutching a worn, carved dragon figurine. He didn't cry, but something in his eyes had broken, something that shouldn't have cracked in a child. "Why do they want me dead?" he asked without looking up. Jon hesitated. "Because you're something they fear, and things that make people afraid. They often try to destroy." The boy whispered, "I didn't ask to be born." Jon exhaled slowly. "None of us did." Later, Jon met Lysara in her study, where she was already writing letters with a trembling hand. Ravens prepared to fly. "We have to move him. They'll try again, and next time they won't miss." "Where would you send him?" Jon asked. She looked up. "To Dragonstone, where it began. If he is to become anything, it must start there." Jon frowned. "That's the last place he should go. The moment his presence is known, Westeros will bleed." "That's not your decision anymore," she snapped. "You had your chance with Daenerys. You threw it away." Jon's voice dropped. "To ice. Don't speak of her like you understood her." Lysara stared hard at him. "I did. I was there in the shadows when you were in the light. You broke her, Jon Snow. She burned a city, but she trusted you, and you stuck a blade in her heart." He didn't flinch, but the blow landed all the same. "I did what I had to," he said quietly. "And now you'll do what you think is right again, I suppose? Even if it means killing another child?" The room felt like winter. Jon said nothing. He turned and left without another word, but he couldn't sleep that night. Couldn't stop seeing Daenerys' face, torn between wrath and love. Couldn't stop hearing the boy's question. "Why do they want me dead?" Tyrion's second raven arrived before sunrise. The lords of Westeros are dividing. Dorne denies involvement. But the Highgarden lords whisper war. If the boy exists, they want him dead. If he doesn't, they'll invent him anyway. "Come home, or this storm will swallow everything." Jon read it, then threw the scroll into the sea. By midday, Lysara had prepared the ship, a sleek vessel flying no colors, heading west for Dragonstone. Jon helped the boy aboard, but when he turned to leave, Maelys grabbed his hand. "Are you coming?" Jon froze. The crew looked on in silence. Lysara didn't speak. The sea stretched, wide and gray behind them, a mirror of every choice he'd ever made. He wanted to say no. He wanted to let the sea take them and forget. But he saw Daenerys' eyes in that boy, the same longing, the same dangerous hope. "I'll follow on another ship," he said. Maelys frowned. "Promise?" Jon knelt. "I promise." The ship sailed off with the tide, a lonely shadow across the waves. Jon returned to the inn, but didn't stay long. He'd gathered his men, his gear, and Ghost. He wrote a letter to Bran, to Sansa, to Tyrion. He told them the boy was real. He told them he had seen the truth, and then he burned the letter before it could be sent, because words were no longer enough. Not for this. If he was to defend the child, it had to be more than letters and whispers. He had to stand for something. Again, that evening, a Lycian nobleman visited him in secret. Tall, thin, slick with scented oil. "There's a bounty on your head now," the man said, sliding a dagger across the table. "From Dorne and Old Town. Some say House Hightower has already sent ships. They fear the boy, but they fear you more." Jon stared at the dagger. "Let them come." The man smiled nervously. "You've no banners, no house. I have my name," Jon cut in. "That's all I ever had, and it's more than enough." By nightfall, Jon Snow was gone from Lys. No one saw him leave. No one knew where he went, but in the dark, across the sea, a rumor began to spread that the White Wolf rode again. That the Slayer of Queens now protected a Prince of Fire. That Jon Snow had chosen his side, and that side was not peace, it was truth. And truth, in Westeros, always brought fire and blood. The sea roared beneath the hull of Jon's stolen fishing boat, a creaking wooden shell tossed by waves with no care for its rider's purpose. He didn't sleep. He barely ate. Ghost stood guard on the deck, eyes glowing against the stormlight, while Jon stared endlessly into the gray horizon. Ahead lay Dragonstone. Behind him, silence and smoke. He hadn't told anyone he was coming. Not Lysara, not the boy. He couldn't. Not with enemies watching every raven, following every whisper. But he had to be there when the storm broke. And it would break. He could feel it in his bones, the way he had before the long night, before Daenerys' fall. That same trembling in the world, like breath held before a scream. When the jagged silhouette of Dragonstone finally pierced the sky, Jon felt something shift in his chest. The island was black stone and memory, soaked in secrets and fire. He docked the boat just before dawn, cloaked in salt and shadow. Ghost leapt ashore, nose to the wind, sensing something wrong. The villa on the cliffs had been arranged by Lysara, hidden, unassuming, but close enough to the ancient fortress to watch the waves. Jon approached it cautiously, keeping low along. The rocky path. He expected quiet. Instead, he heard shouting. 2 guards lay dead near the entrance. Blood stained the stones. Jon didn't hesitate. He burst through the door, sword already drawn inside. Chaos reigned. Lysara knelt against a wall, wounded but alive, pressing cloth to a gash on her side. "They came in the night," she gasped. "Assassins. Not Dornish this time. Westerosi. One bore the Lion of Lannister." Jon's blood turned to ice. "Is the boy safe?" She nodded. "Taken down to the caves?" "The ones beneath the keep." Jon moved instantly, leaving her behind. He knew the caves well. Daenerys had shown him once, when they'd still believed in each other. The obsidian still clung to the walls, jagged and ancient. He descended into the dark, torchlight flickering against damp stone. His footsteps echoed, and Ghost followed silently behind. He found them deeper in. Meleys crouched behind a fallen table, guarded by one of Jon's Lycian escorts, now bleeding badly from a wound in his side. The boy looked up as Jon approached. Terrified but steady. "You came," Meleys whispered. Jon dropped beside him, pulling the guard away and examining the corridor. "I promised, didn't I?" Heavy footsteps echoed from further down the tunnel. Not many. 3, maybe 4. Jon signaled Ghost to take the side passage, then turned to the boy. "Stay behind me. Don't speak. No matter what happens." Meleys nodded. The first assassin came fast, a shadow in black, knife flashing in the torchlight. Jon moved quicker. Lone Claw cleaved the man's arm at the elbow before he could strike. The second charged with a longsword, well-trained and brutal. Their blades clashed hard, steel ringing in the silence. Jon ducked a strike, drove his shoulder into the attacker's chest, then spun and buried his sword deep. The third tried to flank him. Ghost intercepted with a snarl, dragging the man to the ground in a fury of white fur and snapping teeth. The fight ended in less than a minute, but Jon felt every heartbeat as though it lasted a lifetime. When it was done, he turned to the boy. "Are you hurt?" Mealy shook his head. His small fists were clenched, knuckles white. "Why do they want me dead so badly?" "Because they fear what you might become," Jon said. Breathless. May Elwise looked up at him. "What am I becoming?" Jon stared at him a long time. "That's what I came to find out." They left the caves at dawn. The sea quiet now, as if the world itself was waiting. By noon, more riders arrived at Dragonstone. Not enemies, but messengers from the Vale, the North, and even the Reach. Some bore letters, some blades. All brought the same question. Is the Targaryen boy alive? Rumor had become wildfire. Some called him the rightful king. Others named him a curse. The lords of Westeros began to choose sides, and Jon Snow stood in the middle once more, not as king, not as exile, but as the sword that shielded a fragile hope. In the war that was to come, it wouldn't be dragons that decided the realm. It would be men. The nights on Dragonstone grew colder, harsher, despite the season. Whispers filled the halls like smoke, of ships seen in the distance, of ravens intercepted, of blades sharpening in the dark. Jon rarely slept. When he did, it was shallow and full of dreams. Daenerys walking across a sea of ash, the boy standing on a throne of bones, and the fire always waiting, always growing. The messages continued to arrive. Most were veiled threats. A few offered alliances. Sansa's letter was among them. Hers was written in her own careful hand. "I don't know what game you're playing, Jon, but I pray you're playing it wisely. The North remembers, and we will not. Kneel for fire again." He read it 3 times before burning it. Then came a message from the Vale. Lord Robin Arryn had pledged neutrality, but offered protection for the boy, if needed. Jon knew better. The moment Meleys crossed into any lord's castle, he would be a hostage, not a guest. Still, the most troubling raven arrived with no sigil. Its parchment bore only 2 words. Heirs burned. No name. No sender. Just a warning. Jon called a meeting that night in the great hall of Dragonstone. It was quiet, cold, and lit only by the low, sputtering torches lining the walls. Lysara was there, bandaged but fierce. A few loyal knights from Lys, the wounded guard from the cave, and a handful of mesters. Meleys sat at the edge of the room, half hidden in shadow, listening. Jon spoke plainly. The realm is dividing. Some see Meleys as a hope. Others see him as a weapon. All will come for him. "We need to make a move before they do," Lysara said. "Declare him. Put him on a ship to Old Town or River Run. Rally the Targaryen loyalists." Jon shook his head. "He's not ready for that. He's still a child. He's a symbol." She snapped. "He doesn't have to be ready. He just has to be seen." Jon stood slowly, and his voice dropped. "That's what they said about Daenerys. And they kept saying it until the sky rained fire." The room fell silent. Meleys rose from his chair. "What if I don't want any of it?" Everyone turned. He stepped forward. "I don't want to be king. I don't want to be a dragon. I just want to live." "You may not have that choice," Lysara said bitterly. Jon crouched in front of him. "You do. But if you want to live, truly live, you need to decide now. Because once this starts, it won't stop. You'll always be watched, always be hunted." Meleys was quiet a moment. "If I say no, will they still try to kill me?" Jon didn't lie. Yes, but fewer people will die for you. And if I say yes, then you'll need to become something bigger than your name. The boy's eyes, at violet fire, locked onto Jon's. Like you did? Jon looked away. I never became anything. I only survived. That night, Meleys asked. For one thing, to see the dragons. When Jon told him they were gone, extinct, the boy simply nodded. Then I'll have to be enough. It was the next morning that war came to Dragonstone. Not with armies or banners, but with sails. A fleet appeared on the horizon before sunrise, black ships bearing the twin towers of House Hightower. They claimed to bring diplomats, but Jon knew better. Spies and saboteurs filled their hulls. Old Town had always feared fire more than they feared gods. Jon stood at the cliffs, watching them approach, wind tearing through his cloak. He turned to Meleys, who now wore a plain leather tunic, hair tied back with silver thread. They'll ask you to surrender. They'll promise peace. I won't believe them. They might offer you the citadel, a life of learning, far from the throne. The boy looked up at him. Would you take that deal? Jon didn't answer. The ships docked at mid-morning. A single party was allowed up, led by a tall, silver-bearded man in priest's robes and armor beneath. He bowed low. Jon Snow, I come on behalf of Old Town to offer the boy a life untouched by politics. We believe he's innocent. And we believe you mean well. Let us take him, and this ends peacefully. Jon stared at him, then pointed at the guards behind him. That one carries a poison blade, and the other bears a scroll meant to forge confessions. You've come to clean history, not protect it. The priest smiled. If you stand in the way of peace, you will be remembered as the traitor who brought fire back to Westeros. Jon's voice was cold and clear. No, I'll be remembered as the man who stood between the innocent and those who think their lies are holy. And with that, he drew his sword. The wind howled across the black cliffs of Dragonstone as the standoff grew heavier with every breath. Jon's hand gripped Loneclaw tightly, the sword gleaming in the gray light. The Hightower envoy didn't flinch, but his men shifted uneasily behind him. They hadn't expected Jon Snow to be so direct. They expected doubt, diplomacy, but what they found was the quiet fury of a man who had nothing left to lose and everything to protect. I won't let you take him, Jon said flatly. The priest held his hands up in mock peace. You mistake our intentions. We only seek to protect the boy from the realm, from you. A low growl rumbled from behind. Ghost stood beside Jon now, his white fur bristling, teeth bared. Leave Dragonstone, Jon said. No. The priest's smile faltered. You would make war over a child? Jon stepped forward, his voice low and sure. I've killed kings and queens. I've marched against the dead, and I've lived with the weight of it. Don't mistake my silence for hesitation. There was no more talk after that dot. The Hightower envoy returned to their ships. But by nightfall, fires burned along the coast. Warning lights, signals. Jon climbed the ancient tower beside the keep and saw it with his own eyes. More sails. Dozens of them, coming from the south. Not traders. Not pilgrims. Warships. They mean to take him by force, Jon said to Lysara, watching from the window. They'll surround us within days, she whispered. We don't have the numbers. Jon nodded. We don't need to win. We just need to survive. He called the boy into the war room. Meleys stood small before the map, his fingers brushing over the scattered markers, representing allied houses and enemies alike. You don't have to fight, Jon told him. You can still flee. There are ships hidden secret passages. No, the boy said. If I run now, I'll be running forever. Jon studied him. Then you stand with us? The boy looked up at him, solemn. I want to live. but not hiding. If this is who I am, then I want to fight for it. Jon saw something then, not fire, not madness, but conviction. The kind Daenerys once wore, before it turned into something. Else, then we fight, Jon said. Preparations began immediately. The island's small garrison was armed and placed in narrow choke points. Ballistas were wheeled into the cliffsides. Wildfire, found deep in Dragonstone's ancient tunnels, was carefully distributed. Jon had always feared it. Now he needed it as night fell. Jon stood in the godswood beneath a twisted, old tree that had somehow survived centuries on the rocky island. Ghost lay beside him. He whispered to the air, to the stars, to the ghosts in his mind, to the old gods and the new, and the ones we burned with fire. He closed his eyes. If I die tomorrow, let it be with my eyes open. The attack came at dawn. It wasn't a siege. It was a storm. Dozens of high-tower ships launched smaller vessels toward the cliffs. Men in black and gold poured ashore, swarming the beachhead with ladders, hooks, firebombs. Their banners claimed righteousness. Their blades knew only ambition. Jon led from the walls. He fought not like a commander, but like a ghost out of legend, moving through the chaos, striking down enemies with brutal, unrelenting grace. Ghost lunged beside him, tearing through armor and screams. Lauzara was wounded again, but fought. On. Her guards died around her, defending the main hall where Meleys was hidden. The boy listened to the battle above, the walls trembling with every explosion. Still, he didn't run. Jon reached the lower keep where the enemy had broken through. He met the high tower captain in single combat, a tall knight with a cruel laugh and a golden mace. Their clash was fierce, brutal. Steel cracked stone. Blood painted the floor. Jon's shoulder was dislocated. His ribs shattered. But he didn't fall. He drove Longclaw through the man's throat and stood over his corpse, chest heaving. Then silence fell. The attack had failed. Bodies littered the shore. Fire smoldered across the docks. The sea carried broken ships back into the abyss. Dragonstone held, but at a cost. Jon was carried to his chambers, barely conscious. His wounds were grave. The mesters whispered in dark corners. That night, Meleys entered his room and sat beside him. Jon, pale and feverish, opened his eyes just long enough to whisper, "The realm won't stop." The boy took his hand. "Then we won't either." And in that moment, something passed between them. Not blood, not prophecy, but a bond, a beginning.